Hey everyone, this is Mario again, coming at you with another review, and Merry Christmas to all. It's that time of year again, and I didn't get a chance to review that many Christmas films this year, but I decided that if I was going to do a Christmas film, if at least one, I wanted it to be one I hadn't seen before, because I've already reviewed a couple films two films I grew up with throughout all my childhood, and then one that was at the ending of my childhood, beginning of my teenage years that I do love. So I decided, I'll do one I haven't seen. There was a couple that came to mind, but one that came to the very top of my mind is one that I had always seen trailers for, maybe seen a couple of scenes, flipping through channels, but never watched it in its entirety. And of course, a couple months ago I got it in my collection via a thrift store. It of course is the Arnold Schwarzenegger starring film, Jingle All the Way. Put that cookie down! Now! Yep, that film. Now, the movie is directed by Brian Levant, which I am semi-familiar with his work, because I've heard of Problem Child 2, but I've never seen it. Beethoven is a film from my childhood, childhood favorite. Flintstones was also one, but I haven't rewatched it in years. That'll be another childhood favorites episode sometime. Flintstones and Viva Las Vegas I haven't seen since it came out, and I did see it in theaters, so I'll just see my feelings on that. I have not seen Snow Dogs. Are We There Yet? I remember liking to an extent. I haven't seen the Scooby-Doo Mystery Begins movie, or The Spy Next Door, or Scooby-Doo Curse of the Lake Monster, or the film he did last year, A Christmas Story 2. I haven't even seen the first Christmas Story, so why should I watch a sequel? Anyway, in addition to Schwarzenegger, the film stars Sinbad, Phil Hartman, Rita Wilson, Robert Conrad, a young Jake Lloyd pre-Star Wars, and James Belushi. The score is done by David Newman, and it really does fit the tone of the film and the spirit of Christmas. And the film was written by Randy Cornfield and an uncredited rewrite by Chris Columbus, which you can kind of tell it has this kind of style here, which that's one of the negative things apparently some of the critics I have read the reviews of gave it, which I could see why. I'll say Home Alone is better, but this is still a fun family Christmas movie, and Arnold does really fit in it. Now, as you can already tell, this film did get negative reviews because of Arnold being in it. It has a 17 with the critics on Rotten Tomatoes and a 38 with the audience, and reading through all these reviews, I'm like, really? They really hate it that much? Some of them are more recent. Like, one of them is like, he's running California and he agreed to make this. It's like, really? You're going to take that type of a shot at him? I mean, it's not the biggest Christmas classic, but I would consider it a 90s classic Christmas film. And maybe it's just me looking at it with adult mind for the first time instead of watching it as a kid and then rewatching it later. But I will say it kind of is doing the same thing that The Grinch does to an extent. That it's taking a shot at the materialism that Christmas is becoming. That's usually during the first two halves where Arnold is trying to get the toy. And then in the third act, the lesson is, that family is what matters. It's very, very subtle. It's a little bit more in your face than The Grinch, but it is there. And I think that's what makes this film, at least in my opinion, a good Christmas film, is that it has that little moral about Christmas. Because as I mentioned when I reviewed The Grinch, the bad thing about Christmas is it's becoming way too commercial, all about the toys and all that, even with it being people starting to sell the stuff all the way back in November. And maybe it's also because now that I'm an adult, I'm actually seeing what the true spirit of Christmas is, with more of an open mind, and being happy just to be around family around Christmas time. That's what makes it better. As a kid, you want, when are we getting to open presents? Also, I get to see that just from my niece and nephew, like Seth. Last night, always like, when are we going to get to open presents? I'm like, so this is what we all sounded like when we were younger. It's just one of those things, I guess you could say kind of like a little, back in my day, thing like that. I know I'm getting a little off topic, but I had to think of it. Now the movie was made for $75 million and made a little under 130, so it made back its money, but not that much. I could see sort of how it would cost $75 million, especially in the third act, but not a lot, because if you think about it, that's only like $20 million less than what Terminator 2 cost like let me double check what year this was made. 96. Like 5 years earlier, Terminator 2 cost $20 more million. A little bit of inflation probably involved there, but it's like, okay, you could see almost $100 million in Terminator 2. In this movie, you can't. It's hard for me to see $75 million without thinking, yeah, a good chunk probably went to Arnold, which you can make his money, but you have to admit that there is a point in an actor's career where they start to get overpaid. And this, I think, is around the time Arnold probably was getting into that, but he's still good in here, and he fits this type of character. Now, the plot of our film is that Arnold's character, Howard Langston, is a workaholic mattress salesman, which is nailed home in the first scene. And he does not really find much time for his wife, Liz, played by Rita Wilson, and his young son, Jamie. Especially when compared to the next-door super dad, Ted, played by Phil Hartman, who, with all the stuff he does, helping around the mothers, around the neighborhood, he puts Howard in a bad light. Which you see that the first scene you see him, you're like, yeah, this is the guy I'm going to want to smack. And if I was in Howard's position, I'd probably want to smack him at the same. I'd probably want to smack him too. Now, of course, like any film with a workaholic dad, there's always an incident that sparks the conflict between him and his son. And in this movie, it is Howard missing Jamie's karate class graduation, where he was graduated to purple belt. And of course, Howard's like, oh crap. And it's partially Howard's fault and partially not his fault. And the reason I say that is that it's his fault because he didn't schedule time to get there, including driving time. And even though he tried to get out of it by breaking the law, that's where it is part of his fault, because he broke the law and then he got pulled over. But he got pulled over, and that's the part where it's out of his hands, even though he is the catalyst for getting pulled over. And of course, I just love the look on Arnold's face when he's asked to save. Yeah, he's going to save the alphabet. He's going to say the alphabet backwards. It's like, oh crap. Well, he goes and tries to make it up with his son, and the way he can redeem himself is if he can get Jamie's Christmas toy, which is an action figure of Turbo Man, which is a popular TV show that Jamie watches. It's kind of like an over-the-top show in the vein of like all the, you know, Japanese shows like Super Sentai, and of course it's American counterpart Power Rangers, stuff like that. You know, people in suits kicking butt, a lot of over-the-top jumping and acting, stuff like that. And of course, you know, as a kid growing up in the 90s, I understand that. But now as an adult, I can see as a parent, it's like, oh crap, what's the appeal? And also, I can identify with Howard's frustration afterwards as he tries to get one, because he didn't get the toy when he was supposed to, and since it's the day before Christmas, it's a rush to get it, and he doesn't get it. I understand that part because a couple years ago, before my grandfather passed away, we were sent to the Toys R Us by us to get this weird hamster toy thing. I forget the name of it, for my niece. We were there when it opened. It wasn't as big a line as we see outside the toy store here, because we're not that big of a city, even one city over where we went to it. But it was still a good-sized one, and we had to get to the line quickly to get what we wanted. Now, that's a small toy store. I can only imagine the frustration at a bigger toy store the day before Christmas, because we got ours a month in advance. So we did what Arnold's character failed to do. I can only imagine if we went there like a couple days before Christmas. I think it was, I'm trying to remember if it was Christmas or a birthday that we were getting it for, or either one, but I'm guessing Christmas, but I can imagine just the frustration. Now, while Arnold's there, he meets a character named Myron, played by Sinbad, who's a postal worker. And of course, throughout the film, they butt heads a couple times in an attempt to get the doll. And Howard just keeps getting into mess after mess after mess. Like, they get to a toy store where they're basically selling the dolls for higher than what they are worth, just because of the fact that it's a hot commodity, which I don't know how the stores work, but I don't think they're allowed to mark up the price that much just because it's a toy that is selling like that. I know on eBay you can get away with it or something, but I don't think a chain store is allowed to do that. But I could be wrong. Anyway, it's a movie, so I just let it slide there. Selling it with numbers thing, and then the number, and then of course, I'm not a pervert, I'm just looking for a Turbo Man doll, that whole scene. And then of course the whole Santa thing where they're selling fake toys, which, that scene is funny because of the fighting thing, and one of the Santas being played by professional wrestler Paul White, aka The Giant, aka Big Show. That alone is funny. just, Arnold's going to easily go through them. So how do you make an obstacle for Arnold in the form of a Santa? Get the biggest Santa you can find. Yeah. And then, of course, the ending where he dresses up like Turbo Man, and, well, that's a fun scene. That's an over-the-top scene, but it is a fun scene. And it's because of that and the heart this film has that I do agree more with the IMDb score, though I think it could be just a skosh bit higher, which is a 5.2. I think it should be at least a 5.5. Not a 6, but at least a 5.5. And it's just, the film is fun and it has a heart to it. That's why I don't understand why the critics were harsh on it too much. Just because it's not super, super highbrow, it's a bad film. But then again, it was probably because it's the midst of Arnold's career. It was a couple years before he left for the 8 years he was governor of my state. And then he's come back now. So this is probably it. The critics always seem to get the most harsh on an actor at Arnold's level, or being paid like that, when they're in the height of their career like that. And it's just something I noticed, but could be, for some films it's understandable. For this one, I don't think it deserves the hate it gets. Now, apparently, this is something I just found out about this film. There was a lawsuit filed in 1998 by Murray Hill Publishing when they sued 20th Century Fox for $150,000, claiming that the idea for the film was stolen from a screenplay they had purchased from a high school teacher entitled Could This Be Christmas? They said the script had 36 similarities with Jingle All the Way, including the plot, dialogue, and character names. The president of Murray Hill bought the script in '93 and sent it to Fox and other studios the following year, but received no response, and claimed that the idea was copied by Cornfield, the original writer of Jingle All the Way, who was Fox's script reader. Now, considering who was in charge of Fox at the time, I can sort of see where they're coming with this, whether or not it's just a coincidence, or the guy who read through the scripts forgot about it, and then later on was thinking of ideas and it just came to him and then he just wrote it. That could happen, but like I said, with Fox, I see more likely Murray Hill's thing. Not to say that the film itself is bad. I'm not going to hold points against the film for the behind-the-scenes things like that, but it makes me wonder. And 2001, Fox were found guilty of stealing the idea, and they were ordered to pay $19 million. $15 in damages and foreign legal costs to Murray Hill, with Webster receiving a portion. Of course, on appeal, the damage figure was lowered to $1.5 million, and the verdict itself was eventually overturned in 2004. Ironically, a year after Arnold won the race to become governor, with the judge deciding that the idea was not stolen, as Fox had bought Cornfield's script before he or anybody else at Fox had read Could This Be Christmas? That I find interesting. I think it would be more interesting to read Could This Be Christmas after watching this film again to notice the similarities. It'd be interesting. But Jingle All the Way, I think, is a better title for a movie than Could This Be Christmas, but that's just me. Acting-wise, it's what you would expect for a family film with Arnold in it, but good. Arnold does a great job as Howard. You really feel for the guy as he's going on there. And it really, if there's one scene that really nails home the frustration Arnold's character feels in this film, it's the scene where the reindeer comes in through the house after he's had a little fight with his wife and his neighbor, and he just looks at him and goes, "You picked the wrong day," and then punches the reindeer square in the face. That's one scene nails home all the frustration Arnold has been feeling throughout the whole film. And he nails it perfectly. Sinbad is Myron. He does a good job. I haven't seen his other acting stuff, but he did a good job here. Phil Hartman is Ted, the neighbor. He is a guy that you can tell sort of why the people around the neighborhood might like him. But the whole time you just want to smack him because of how smug he is about it. I can understand Arnold's frustration with the guy. Now, I'm sort of familiar with some of his other stuff. I know he was in Three Amigos, but I haven't seen all that all the way. I believe he was in Coneheads as well as The Pagemaster. And the same year as this, he was in Sergeant Bilko, which is where I recognize him from. Major Thorne. He did a voice over in Kiki's Delivery Service. And I'm checking to see if he has done TV stuff, because I swear there's something on TV. Okay, now I remember. That's what it was. Of course, his most famous TV thing is voicing Troy McClure on The Simpsons. And of course, sad thing about that is that he was killed by his girlfriend, I believe, or his wife or something. Let's see, yeah, I believe his wife. I'm double checking right here. It says death. Visit an Italian restaurant. Okay, his wife said they had a heated argument and then she shot him. So kind of sad. Oh yeah, he played Officer Davis in Loaded Weapon 1. That's the other thing. That's the officer that, you know, laughs and then Samuel Jackson's character makes him tell the joke. And then, you know, he quips after the thing, "Don't let him have any donuts." He's missed because he's good at it. He was good at playing characters like this. Rita Wilson as Arnold's wife. She did a pretty good job. They don't really share that many scenes together except for beginning before he goes to look for the Dolan at the end. But you believe them. There's enough believability between them that you can believe their spouses. And she did a pretty good job in it. I'm not really familiar with much of her work. I know she was in the Psycho remake in addition to this. I'm looking to see what else she was in. Old Dogs. That's about it I recognize. I know she's married to Tom Hanks right now, so a little funny Hollywood connection in this. Don't think I need to talk about Jake Lloyd. Robert Conrad, I think he played the officer who keeps running into Arnold. He did a good job for that character. James Belushi is the main mall Santa. He did a good job with it. I know him mostly from that show, I think it is, that he had, I think it's called According to Jim or something. I'm going to double check because I don't want to say the wrong name. Yeah, According to Jim. I thought he did a good job on that show, though I haven't seen every episode. And of course he's the younger brother of John Belushi. He did a good job with it. At the moment I heard that voice, I'm like, yeah, I know who that is. That's cool. Yeah, he did it. Direction-wise, I've already mentioned Levant did a good job. And nothing really else to say about this film, because the film kind of just speaks for itself. My rating for the film, I give it a 4 out of 5 stars. If you're an Arnold fan and you haven't seen this film, put that cookie down and watch it!